The quantum-locked archives of Void Threshold 9 had not updated themselves in 4,000 cycles. Krelvath knew this because he checked them every rotation, a ritual born from crushing boredom rather than diligence. Security officer for a station that hosted philosophical debates between species so old they remembered when stars were young was not the glory position his broodmother had envisioned. Then the transmission came through. Void Threshold 9. This is transport vessel Peregrine's Whisper requesting emergency docking. We carry one passenger, one human. Krelvath's 3 primary eyes blinked in sequence, a biological impossibility his species reserved for moments of extreme confusion. His manipulator appendages hovered over the communication panel, trembling slightly. "Repeat last designation," he said, his translator chip struggling with words his mouth had never formed. Human, Terran, Homo sapiens, the species from the Cascading Dark legends. The station's central atrium had been carved from a single piece of crystallized spacetime by the architects who came before, its surfaces etched with the names of every species that had achieved void travel and subsequently vanished into history or extinction. Krelvath stood in that atrium now, watching the docking tube extend like a tendril of desperate curiosity toward the battered transport ship. Around him, the delegates of the conclave of elapsed memories had gathered. Shimmer Vex, a thought weaver whose crystalline body reflected dimensions humans had supposedly theorized but never seen, chimed with agitated frequency. Beside her, or perhaps through her, spatial relationships were suggestions to thought weavers, stood Breath of Countless Sorrows, a dust singer whose vapor-form body occasionally coalesced into something approaching solidity before dissipating again. "This is archaeological blasphemy," rumbled Granite, who witnessed suns die, an epoch guardian whose stone body predated most contemporary stellar formations. "Humans are myth. Cautionary tales we tell to explain the gaps in our history. Myths don't request docking permission," Krelvath muttered, adjusting his ceremonial armor. The old protocols were clear. Any being entering the conclave grounds must surrender all weapons, all tools of violence, all implements of destruction. It was law carved into the station's foundation, written in languages dead before Krelvath's species had discovered fire. The airlock cycled with a hiss that seemed to carry the weight of epochs. The creature that emerged was underwhelming. Bipedal, as the legend suggested. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. Skin that appeared distressingly fragile, covered partially by layered fabrics that served no obvious protective function. Hair the color of burned copper crowned its skull in an unruly mess. Its eyes, 2 of them, inadequate by any reasonable standard, were the blue of deep water on worlds that still had oceans. It smiled, revealing blunt teeth that could neither rend nor tear efficiently. "Afternoon," the human said, its voice carrying an accent that Krelvath's translator couldn't quite place in any known linguistic family. "Name's Tornach Vess. I'm here for the conclave session on ancient warfare tactics. Sorry I'm late. Got held up dealing with a paradox engine malfunction near the fold." Krelvath's training reasserted itself. He raised his ceremonial scanner, a device that could detect everything from antimatter charges to weaponized thought patterns. "Ancient protocols require all visitors to surrender weapons before entering the conclave grounds," he announced, his voice echoing through the atrium. "Please comply." Tornach nodded amiably. Sure. Absolutely reasonable." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a blade. Simple metal, edge honed to molecular sharpness. He placed it on the scanning table. The scanner chimed. Weapon detected and cataloged. "Anything else?" Krelvath asked. "Oh, yeah." Tornach reached into another pocket and produced an energy disruptor, compact but clearly capable of significant destruction. Then another pocket yielded a set of throwing spikes. Another pocket, another weapon. Krelvath's confidence began to erode around the 7th pocket. By the 15th, a small crowd had gathered. The delegates whispered among themselves in frequencies ranging from subsonic to dimensions where sound was merely a polite suggestion. "How many pockets does that garment possess?" Shimmervex chimed, her crystalline structure refracting light in patterns that suggested deep confusion. Tornach paused, apparently counting. "On this jacket, 12 external, 8 internal. But I've got pockets in the vest, the pants, the boots, the belt, the..." He pulled a gravitational anchor from his boot. It clattered onto the growing pile of confiscated items with a thunk that made the ancient stone floor shudder. 23rd pocket, a chemical compound sealed in quantum stasis. 29th pocket, something that looked like a religious icon, but registered on the scanner as a antimatter catalyst. 35th pocket, a device Krelvath couldn't identify, which troubled him more than anything else. His scanner simply labeled it contraindicated for reality. Is this all of them? Krelvath asked desperately when Tornach paused, patting himself down. Let me check. The human began a systematic search of his person that revealed pockets within pockets, hidden compartments in seams, and storage spaces that seemed to violate conservative estimates of spatial geometry. Breath of Countless Sorrows had solidified completely, his vapor-form body achieving unusual coherence in his fascination. The legend spoke of human ingenuity, but this seems excessive even for myth. 41st pocket, a monofilament wire capable of slicing through most known materials. 44th pocket, a set of lockpicks that registered as both tools and weapons, depending on philosophical interpretation. 47th pocket, a small sphere that Krelvath's scanner labeled simply as problem. Krelvath stared at the mountain of weapons, tools, and unidentifiable objects piled on his scanning table. The table, designed to handle the occasional ceremonial blade or energy pistol, groaned under the weight of human preparedness. Is that everything? Krelvath asked, knowing in his core that he would regret the question. Tornach smiled again, that strange expression of bared teeth that somehow conveyed friendliness despite its predatory nature. Oh, those are just the weapons I'm comfortable surrendering. He tapped his temple with one finger. Still got the dangerous stuff right here. Your brain? Krelvath's translator struggled with the concept. Human brains, officer. We're problem-solving machines wrapped in anxiety and spite. Give us a paperclip and 3 minutes. We'll figure out 6 ways to kill you, and 2 ways to make you regret not dying. The ancient security systems, dormant for millennia, installed by species whose names had been forgotten even by stones, suddenly activated. Alarms screamed across every frequency. Holographic warnings materialized in the air, written in the first script that all sapient species could instinctively comprehend. Warning: human consciousness detected. Creativity, levels, catastrophic. Recommendation: evacuate to minimum safe distance of 3 stellar systems. Granite, who witnessed suns die, took a step backward, his massive stone body moving with a speed that shouldn't have been possible. The old warnings. I thought they were metaphorical. They never are with humans, Shimmervex chimed, her structure flickering through several dimensions simultaneously. Tornach looked around at the chaos, at the ancient delegates backing away, at the security systems declaring apocalyptic threat levels based solely on the detection of his unconstrained imagination. He shrugged. So, does this mean I can't attend the conclave session? Because I came a really long way, and I've got some thoughts about your Devourer fleet problem that you might want to hear. The alarms continued to scream. Krelvath stared at the pile of 47 confiscated weapons, then at the human standing calmly amid warnings designed to alert the galaxy to existential threats. What? Krelvath asked slowly. Is the Devourer fleet problem? Tornach's smile widened. Oh, you haven't heard? They're about 6 months out from your nearest inhabited systems. The swarm that ended the last 3 galactic civilizations? They're coming back. The atrium fell silent, except for the alarms. And you came here to warn us? Breath of Countless Sorrows asked, his form rippling with emotion. Warn you? Tornach laughed, the sound carrying an edge that made ancient species uncomfortable, in ways they couldn't articulate. No, I came here to help. Humans are good at exactly one thing, and you're about to remember what it is. The conclave chamber existed in a space where geometry was negotiable. Walls curved into themselves while remaining perfectly flat. The ceiling was simultaneously above and below. It was architecture designed by species who had mastered reality before humans had mastered fire, and it gave Tornach a headache that he ignored with practiced ease. The delegates had assembled in their traditional formation, a circle that was also a spiral, each species positioned according to the age of their civilization. Granite, who witnessed suns die, occupied the innermost position, his stone body adorned with etchings from the first epoch. Shimmervex refracted light beside him, her crystalline structure humming with frequencies that predated sound itself. Tornach sat in the outermost ring, in a chair that had been hastily fabricated because none of the existing furniture accommodated human anatomy. Krelvath stood behind him, one manipulator appendage hovering nervously near his sidearm, the only weapon in the room now that Tornach had been disarmed. "Let us address the absurdity," Granite, who witnessed suns die, began, his voice like continental plates grinding together. "You claim humanity survived the Cascading Dark, the event that shattered reality itself across 17 dimensions, the catastrophe that ended the Age of Ascension. We're cockroaches," Tornach said cheerfully. "You can't get rid of us, and we thrive in the aftermath of apocalypses." Breath of countless sorrows coalesced into something resembling offense. "Your species was wiped out. The archives are clear. Terra became a dead world. Your colonies collapsed. Your dimensional gates imploded." "Yeah, that happened," Tornach agreed. "Worst Tuesday in human history. But here's the thing about humans. We're really, really good at not dying when we're supposed to. We scattered, went deep into the dark spaces where even light was afraid to go. Small groups, hidden colonies, generation ships programmed to wake us when the galaxy stopped screaming." He leaned forward. "We've been watching you rebuild, learning, waiting." "Waiting for what?" Shimmervex chimed, her structure shifting through colors that represented suspicion in her species. "Waiting for something big enough to be worth coming back for." Tornach's expression hardened. "The Devourer fleet qualifies." A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing the approaching swarm. Thousands of vessels, each one a biological nightmare that defied conventional physics. They moved through space like locusts through crops, consuming everything: matter, energy, information itself. "They destroyed the infinite archive," Granite, who witnessed suns die, said quietly. "The transcendent collective, the unity of all-knowing minds, civilizations that had mastered death, time, and consciousness itself, all consumed." "And you're sitting here having philosophical debates while they get closer?" Tornach observed. "We have simulations," Krelvath interjected, his pride stung. "Combat scenarios. Every species has attempted to devise strategies. How'd that work out?" The silence was damning. Shimmervex chimed defensively. "The Thought Weavers lasted 17 hours in simulation before total annihilation. The Epoch Guardians managed 23. The Dusk Singers, 12 hours before reality dissolution." Breath of Countless Sorrows admitted, his vapor form dimming with shame. Tornach stood, stretching muscles that complained about the station's gravity. "Let me try." "You?" Granite, who witnessed suns die's laughter, sounded like an avalanche. "One human against a simulated devourer fleet that has defeated species who had billions of years to perfect warfare? Yeah, one human. Because that's all you ever need." They led him to the simulation chamber, a space that could recreate any combat scenario with perfect fidelity. Tornach studied the controls for exactly 45 seconds before nodding. "Okay, run it." The simulation began. The Devourer fleet materialized, a writhing mass of biomechanical horror. Standard doctrine suggested evacuating population centers, consolidating forces, and preparing for glorious last stands. Tornach ignored all of it. Instead, he used civilian communication arrays to broadcast conflicting signals into the swarm's coordination network. He repurposed agricultural satellites as improvised kinetic weapons. He triggered a cascade of navigational buoys that created a false gravity well, pulling a portion of the fleet into a collision course with a dying star. "This is not warfare," Granite, who witnessed suns die, protested. "This is chaos." "Yeah," Tornach agreed, not looking away from the simulation. He was now using entertainment broadcast systems to transmit aggressive mimetic patterns that confused the Devourer fleet's hive consciousness. "Welcome to human military doctrine. There are no rules except winning." The Thought Weavers watched in horror as Tornach weaponized a civilian medical station, using its biosynthesis systems to create a viral agent that targeted the fleet's organic components. The dust singers recoiled as he detonated a mining colony's fuel reserves to create a shockwave that disrupted the swarm's formation. Every tactic was improvised. Every strategy was technically a war crime by 14 different galactic conventions. Every move worked. 37 minutes after the simulation began, the Devourer fleet was in retreat, their coordination shattered, their numbers decimated, their hive mind screaming in frequencies that translated roughly to, "What the hell just happened?" The chamber fell silent. Tornach turned to face the conclave, his expression neutral. "You want to know the difference between humans and elder species? You fight with honor, with tradition, with millennia of refined tactics. We fight to survive, and we've had 4,000 years to get creative about it." Shimmervex's structure flickered through several dimensions of distress. "I detected 17,000 potential strategies in your mind during that simulation. 17,000 different approaches, each more unconventional than the last. How? Because I spent the entire simulation thinking, what if this doesn't work? And having backup plans for my backup plans, backup plans." Tornach tapped his skull again. "Human brains don't stop problem solving. Ever. It's exhausting, and it keeps us awake at night. And it's why we're still here when species that could manipulate reality itself are dust." Breath of Countless Sorrows achieved full solidity, his form trembling. The old warnings, "Do not fight humans, for they do not fight with honor. They fight to win." I thought it was propaganda. "It's a survival guide," Tornach corrected. "The species that befriended us figured out that we're better as allies than enemies. The ones that didn't." He gestured to the historical archive displays showing extinct civilizations. "Well," Granite, who witnessed sons die, moved forward, his massive form radiating something between respect and terror. "If we accept humanity's return, if we acknowledge your species' continued existence, and invite you to stand with us against the Devourer fleet, what do you want in return?" "Same thing we've always wanted," Tornach said. "To be left alone when we're peaceful, and to be called when things get interesting. We don't want your territories or your resources. We just want a galaxy where we can exist and occasionally solve impossible problems because we're too stubborn to accept that they're impossible." The conclave deliberated in frequencies and dimensions beyond human perception. Tornach waited, hands in his pockets, the few pockets that were now empty. Finally, Shimmervex chimed a harmonic that translated to reluctant acceptance. The conclave acknowledges humanity's survival and extends an invitation to rejoin the galactic community. Your fleet may reveal itself. Your colonies may emerge from hiding. We will stand together against the Devourer fleet. "Appreciated," Tornach said, moving toward the exit. Krelvath blocked his path, all three eyes focused with laser intensity. "The 47th pocket, the last weapon you surrendered. My scanner labeled it as problem. What was it?" Tornach reached into his jacket, a movement that made every delegate in the chamber tense, and pulled out a simple piece of paper folded into a neat square. He handed it to Krelvath. "A list," the security officer read aloud. "A list of 47 backup plans in case the conclave rejected our help. 47 different ways to save the galaxy without your permission." His appendages trembled. Some of these would destabilize entire stellar clusters. "Yeah, well, like I said, we're really good at having backup plans." Tornach smiled, that predatory-friendly smile. "The dangerous thing about humans isn't our weapons or our technology. It's that we never stop thinking about what could go wrong and how to fix it." He paused at the airlock, looking back at the assembled species who had survived the Cascading Dark, who had rebuilt civilization from ashes, who had thought themselves the inheritors of a safer, saner galaxy. "Oh, and Krelvath, you asked if I surrendered all my weapons." The security officer's eyes widened. "The 48th pocket." "There's no 48th pocket," Tornach said. "But you spent the last 5 minutes worried there might be, didn't you? That's the real weapon, uncertainty. The knowledge that humans always have one more trick, one more contingency, one more impossibly stupid idea that somehow works." He winked. "Sweet dreams." The airlock cycled shut. Moments later, the Peregrine's whisper detached from Void Threshold 9 and disappeared into the void. Krelvath looked down at the list in his manipulator appendages. 47 backup plans, each one detailed enough to actually work, each one more audacious than the last. At the bottom of the page, in handwriting that somehow conveyed smugness, was a final note. P.S. Stock, we've been preparing for this moment for 4,000 years. The Devourer fleet won't know what hit them. Neither will you. Welcome back to the age of humanity. Try to keep up. Granite, who witnessed suns die, approached the viewport, watching the human ship vanish into the darkness between stars. I have witnessed the birth of suns and the death of galaxies. I have seen civilizations rise to godhood and fall to dust, but I have never been more terrified than I am right now. Why? Shimmervex chimed. Because, the ancient being rumbled, for 4,000 years, humans have been hiding in the dark, planning, preparing, becoming more creative, more dangerous, more unstoppably human. He turned away from the viewport. The Devourer fleet is coming, but I think they're the ones who should be afraid. 6 months later, when the Devourer fleet arrived at the border of known space, they encountered something they had never experienced in their million-year history of consumption. Resistance that made no sense, tactics that violated causality, an enemy that treated warfare like an art form where every rule was negotiable, and every defeat was just set up for a more elaborate victory. They encountered humans who had spent 4 millennia planning for this exact moment. The galaxy watched in awe, horror, and profound relief, as humanity reminded the cosmos why ancient species had built warning systems specifically to detect their presence. Some weapons, the elder races learned, were best kept as surprises. Some species were best kept as allies. And some legends, once awakened, were impossible to put back to sleep.